Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for part 3 of our talk on how inclusivity shapes the tech we all use. In part 2, we looked at what inclusivity and accessibility really mean and how they apply to all of us, at least for some of the time. For part 3, we have 5 tactics you can use today. We want to share some practical ideas, things that you can start doing straight away. So in order of effort involved, let's start with something easy. Tactic 1, start a book club. It could be just for yourself or a way of bringing people together around a shared interest. We have 3 books that we can recommend. First, Mismatch by Kat Holmes. If you want to understand deeper how design can shape a more inclusive world, this book is a must-read. It offers stories and examples to challenge our preconceived ideas and showcase how best to create products and experiences that benefit everyone. Second, The Inclusive Speaker by Dennis Boudreau. Here's a book that's about inclusive communication, and it's aimed at individuals who want to appeal to the widest possible audience when speaking or presenting. So there's lots of advice for any form of verbal communication. And third, Clearly Right by Lim Soo Ping. Lim Soo Ping is a former Singapore Auditor General. In his book, he explores how to write clearly and concisely, because part of communicating inclusively is using plain language and less words. Whether you're copywriting a formal communication to be sent to the public or simply writing messages to your colleagues, we all benefit from easy to understand words. Tactic 2. Tactic 2, build your network. Creating a network of allies is crucial for amplifying your message and collaborating to advocate for change in your organization. So here's 5 steps you can follow. 1, connect with people. Seek out like-minded colleagues who also care about accessibility and inclusion. 2, form a community, somewhere you can share ideas and resources, set up communication spaces, organize lunch and learns, invite external speakers, attend or host events, support each other. Invite people from outside your community to get involved. Just create a focal point. 3, combine your voices. Work together to create a shared vision for accessibility and inclusion in your organization. Use your community to share that vision widely and use a common vocabulary because there's strength in numbers. 4, connect with decision makers. You can increase your influence by reaching out to leadership. Without their buy-in, you won't make much progress. So gather resources relevant to what it is that you work on, create business cases, show the value of accessibility and inclusion, and of your community too. And I'll give an example of this in a moment. And 5, celebrate successes. Recognize, celebrate, and share the progress that you make along the journey. It's another way to be visible and inspires continued action and change. So speaking of celebrating successes, this photo was taken on the first anniversary of our accessibility community in my last job. When I had joined, no thought was given to accessibility in any of their digital services. So we formed a community to bring people together and to discuss how we could improve things. We came up with a simple goal: get an accessibility statement onto our website. We chose this goal because we knew that the page itself was easy, but getting the alignment, the agreement, and the business changes required would be much harder. So it was a very clear goal that no one could say was not worthwhile. A year after our community had started, the company began internal conversations about improving inclusion and diversity. A staff working group was formed for disability and it had an executive sponsor. Because our accessibility community already existed, we could move very quickly. We already had allies in key roles ready to make the changes needed. So 3 months later, the accessibility statement went live on our website, and that became a trigger for broader accessibility action across the company. So a really small and simple change can be that catalyst for a much bigger movement. Tactic 3. We've discussed tactics to increase your knowledge and connect people together. So now let's look at the process, service, app, or website that it is that you work on. We've got 3 suggestions for you. 1, conduct manual testing yourself. Anyone can stress test your communications or service by removing or restricting something. So for example, remove your mouse and try to complete your daily work to better understand what it's like for people who cannot use a mouse. Or you could try to use your digital service using only voice input, or only keyboard controls, or using a screen reader, or with the screen zoom set to maximum. There's many different ways that people use technology that we don't all always know about. And you can make it a fun team activity to try using your service or product in these different ways and then discuss your findings afterwards. Doing these activities won't tell you exactly what it's like for people using your service with assistive technology, but it will quickly show you easy to fix pain points and blockers. And even better, you can seek out people who use assistive technologies and conduct usability studies with them to see how they really interact with your service. 2, professional review. So you can review your service yourself. There's many free tools which will give you a score against internationally agreed standards. But hiring accessibility specialists will give you a detailed report on the general accessibility of your comms or service, prioritize recommendations, and support on how best to move forward. Because accessibility is an ongoing process. Just like code quality or acceptance testing, it's a living part of your service. Regular reviews will ensure that your service remains accessible as it evolves over time. So find people who can help you with conducting reviews, training your team, and connecting you to disability groups that you can partner with. 3, build empathy. A quick question for you in the audience. When was the last time you invited your users into a design session? Rather than designing at people, we really should be designing with them. So for us, the gold standard is when users of a service can participate in designing the solution that they need. That's true human-centered design. As technologists, our job should be to give people an active role in the design of the systems that they then have to use. And a team will gain more insight from a workshop with the people that they're serving than most other forms of research and requirements. So now imagine you ran a design workshop with people with disabilities and gave them the opportunity to shape the solution that you're building for them. Think of the empathy that your team will gain, and think of the inclusion message that that sends.
Tactic 4 is to review your software process. Often it can be difficult to get accessibility features prioritized as an individual workstream, and it might not be sustainable to reach compliance with your accessibility criteria in a one-time effort, in addition to your team's regular work. Accessibility is something you have to continuously work on to become successful. Here are 4 ideas on how to utilize existing ways of working to include accessibility in your development process. Idea 1 is to set clear standards that can help your team get started on accessibility. Reference resources. There are resources available for your team to reference, such as Singapore's digital service standards, government ally teams, or open source accessibility playbooks. At Thoughtworks, we recently released an accessibility playbook that guides teams on how to implement accessibility into team workflows, which is what I'll be touching on. Prioritize by features. Singapore's digital service standards say to use WCAG A or AA. WCAG is very extensive and detailed, which can be quite overwhelming. So instead of going through criteria by criteria to figure out how they relate to your service, sort it out according to what you're providing instead. Review your features and consider how they should be made accessible for all disabilities. Create a checklist. Put all of the criteria that you have identified as relevant in a checklist that is measurable, so you can track the percentage of criteria that are fulfilled. Review it at the various stages of building your service, ideally from start to finish. Teams should also be able to use this checklist to do accessibility reviews on built features or features currently in development. Nominate a champion. Assign ownership of accessibility to a member of your team who will keep tabs on the overall effort and flag topics like proper delegation of tasks. Idea 2, include accessibility checks in your acceptance criteria. Now that you have your checklist of relevant criteria, let's include them into acceptance criteria for your user stories. Because we write user stories limited to the default interaction pattern of being able to use the mouse and see the screen, acceptance criteria can easily be extended to comply with accessibility criteria. For example, in this acceptance criteria, the action click refers to the ability of using a mouse. You can add a second acceptance criteria for the same thing, just for keyboard-only users, by navigating using the tab key. You can extend this even further for screen reader users. Just by tweaking your default acceptance criteria, you have already covered most of the accessibility criteria for this feature. You also make teams aware of what to look out for while building this feature and what to test when evaluating if this story is done. Idea 3, integrate automated accessibility into your software delivery pipeline. Earlier, James talked about conducting manual testing to uncover usability issues. Including accessibility checks in your software pipeline can help to reduce the manual workload of testing for accessibility, as up to 57% of accessibility issues can be caught by automated testing. But this should supplement, not replace, manual accessibility testing. Here are some ways in which you can automate accessibility in development. Evaluate your content and code for accessibility issues to debug, such as checking correct markup and contrast. You can use browser plugins like WebAIM's Wave, Chrome's Lighthouse, and Dqt's XDevTools to evaluate directly within your browser. For developers who prefer to use linter tools, there is Lighthouse CI, ESLint, and XLinter, to name a few. Tools such as Magenta Alley automatically generate accessibility test cases for web, iOS, and Android components to help you write acceptance criteria. Set up automated accessibility libraries like Pally or XMonitor to monitor the accessibility of your websites. This allows you to focus on fixing issues rather than hunting them down. Tactic 5, shift accessibility left. A common pattern we see on many products is that accessibility isn't addressed until just before or even times after the product is released. When you treat accessibility as a problem to solve for later, it becomes expensive and time-consuming to fix, compared to doing it much earlier in the delivery lifecycle. Accessibility testing is still heavily reliant on manual testing and done in the later stages of the delivery lifecycle. Generally, it is better to incorporate accessibility practices right from the start. If you have the opportunity to work on a new digital service, try to do it as early as possible. Unfortunately, we usually find ourselves in a project that has been going on for quite some time or working on a service that has been developed for years. In any case, it is never too late to start somewhere. Even if we can shift left by one stage in the delivery lifecycle, it's a small win. For example, instead of leaving the entirety of screen reader testing towards the end by manual testing, where you will no doubt uncover many issues that need to be fixed, start including accessibility checks for screen readers in your story acceptance criteria. This way, you can be more confident that you will find less faults when you do manual screen reader testing later down the road. Another example is identifying the needs of people with disabilities. Instead of uncovering issues during usability testing with them using functional prototypes, you can shift left by analyzing accessibility requirements at the start of the development and creating a checklist of criteria that will be relevant to your service. You can even start at the very beginning by conducting discovery with accessibility and inclusivity at the core. Shifting accessibility activities left and introducing them early and throughout the delivery lifecycle will ensure inclusive design, continuous feedback, and early detection. This reduces risk, time, cost, and rework. Above all, the best way to make a difference is to focus on organizational mindset and process change. So build your networks and find your allies who can help you to align key groups and initiate discussions towards common accessibility and inclusivity goals. Let's close by summarizing everything. Everyday technology is shaped by a strong tradition of inclusivity. Audiobooks, predictive text, speech recognition, closed captioning, screen readers, touchscreens. Many digital technologies were created to solve problems for disabled people first, and everyone benefits. We need to shift our mindsets. Disability is a spectrum. We are all only ever temporarily able-bodied. There is no such thing as normal or an average person. And when we solve for one, we extend to many. And we also showed you 5 tactics that you can use today. Start a book club. Build your network. Review your service. Review your software process. And begin to shift accessibility left. Our talk today can be summarized in this quote. Just start anywhere. Thank you for watching part 3 of our talk on how inclusivity shapes the tech we all use. We hope we've offered you some new perspectives, shown how easy it can be to have a real impact on the inclusivity and accessibility of the products and services we create, and hopefully inspired some steps you can take in your own teams to help make things better. Good luck.